Hey, how's it going? It's Keith Townsend from the CTOadvisor.com. More in-depth, on-the-ground conversations at VMworld 2019. We're doing a whole day of just sponsored with HPE. We've talked about Cloud Simple, Azure, SimpliVity, the VMware Alliance relationship. Just a lot of great conversations about the relationship between HPE, VMware. Is that still strong? We're going to come in with another element, with all the talk around HCI. HPE still has a really strong conversation around HCI with SimpliVity. And we have your title again?
It's Chief Evangelist for HPE SimpliVity.
Chief Evangelist for HPE SimpliVity. Thomas, now HPE SimpliVity is part of HPE Storage.
Yes.
So let's talk about this, the expansiveness of HPE's portfolio around storage. I mean, we have 3PAR, we have Nimble, we have Synergy, we have the cloud services, and now we have the partnerships. So you guys still have vSAN Ready nodes. You have a relationship with Nutanix now, and now you have SimpliVity still. Tell us about the use cases. Like, who is the customer for SimpliVity?
So I think when you look at hyperconverged infrastructure in general, why is this becoming so popular? It's mainly because it's the simplicity of managing virtual machines, managing your virtual compute, managing your virtual storage from typically a single interface, and don't have to deal with, I have to set up LUNs and volumes on the storage side, I have to configure my servers, do the firmware upgrade separately. So how can I make that all simple? And initially, when hyperconverged infrastructure really started, it was when people said, like, hey, I have this VDI project, or I have this little remote office somewhere on the side. I don't have the extensive IT staff, so can I make it simple for them to operate? And then people saw, like, hey, I can do everything I do in my data center in a simpler way, in a more efficient way, in a more integrated way. So why don't I bring this in a data center? And so today, when we look at hyperconverged infrastructure, it's about simplicity, it's about efficiency, and how do I manage entirely compute and the storage layer as a single entity. So
this HCI story is told a lot. It's all about simplicity.
Simplicity.
And SimpliVity aims to offer that simplicity. Give me an example. Like, what's the practical of how HCI makes storage easy?
So think of any retail supermarket, any retail chain, whatever you want. Typically, you are in very small sites. You have maybe like compute requirements for 10, 20 VMs in that store. What do you do? Point of sales, maybe your timekeeping for people checking in, checking out, inventory management, and a couple of HR functions. So traditionally, what you would have done is you would have put like a storage array in there, you would have put in some compute nodes, you would have racked this all up, put a SAN or an AS in between, and then have this in a store. Now, the problem is in the store, you typically don't have IT staff. You have people who can sell, you have people who can check people out on the cash register, but nobody has IT skills.
Right.
And so how do you manage these stores? Here you can do things remotely, but what happens if something breaks? You have to send someone in, the store is down for a day, you lose the business. Now with hyperconverged infrastructure, that entire infrastructure is reduced to literally basically to one or two nodes that have direct attached storage, that have the compute in there, that is all virtualized, and you can run your VMs in a virtual environment with these two nodes in there. So you take complexity out. Now you can have someone who has a high school degree and has done some things in compute in his life, maybe played some video games, who should be able to press a button of turning it on, turning it off, and then remotely you just manage your VMware environment that you're running on top of this thing.
So talk to me about, that's great when things go right. Mm-hmm. Like for the most part, when HCI works and it works well, like you said, a high school employee, the employee with a high school diploma can manage this, mm-hmm. so to speak. But far from, I have stuff in the middle of Iowa, mm-hmm. and it breaks hard. I get a node that goes down. Mm-hmm. How does HPE help with that situation? That's where I typically see people putting more redundancy there, so that it mitigates the problem not having local staff.
Yeah. So I think this is one of the actually great sides of SimpliVity. So SimpliVity has been designed as a true hyperconverged solution. So it's not how traditionally hyperconverged has been approached. You take a traditional file system, you take traditional technologies and then make it fit for hyperconvergence. But SimpliVity from the ground up was designed as a hyperconverged solution. So there is something what is called a SimpliVity file system, and that is built as a truly redundant file system. What this allows you to do, you can actually build a full HA solution with only 2 physical nodes. So meaning you put 2 servers in there in any remote site, and that gives you a totally redundant solution. You can lose an entire node and your workloads will still be up and running. And the way SimpliVity does it is literally, basically, first of all, when you run a VM, we always keep 2 copies of the data on 2 different nodes. But the way we can do this efficiently is we have built-in deduplication and compression, and we do this globally at a block level. So what this means is our data will significantly be reduced, and we typically see ratios of 50-to-1 or even higher. We have some customers that show a 300-to-1, 400-to-1 ratio, meaning for 1 terabyte of storage, they put effectively 400 terabytes of data on it, if it's backup or production data.
So when I hear dedupe compression, I start to think enterprise class storage solutions. However, you're talking about putting stuff inside of retail stores. Is SimpliVity an enterprise class solution, or is this more of a robo?
It is actually both.
Okay.
And so I think traditionally hyperconverged was coming more from the smaller environments. That's where it grew up and where it became popular. But it has now made the way all the way in the core data centers. And there's a lot of people in enterprise grade data centers who are using hyperconverged infrastructure. And SimpliVity is working in both scenarios. So you can start really, really small if you have an edge or a robo site. But you can also run it in your data center, and you can build clusters of like 50, 60, 70, 80, 100 nodes and really put them all together and build like a massive environment. And you have all the enterprise grade features. You have high availability, you have backup and recovery, you have resiliency built in, and you manage everything out of a VMware interface. And that's the other interesting thing what SimpliVity has done here is we're operating this entire thing directly out of vCenter. So there's no separate management interface you have to go, no separate portal you go. It's literally in your vCenter, you right click on the VM and you can do whatever you want on the SimpliVity side.
So HPE is probably one of the largest enterprise IT companies in the world. So you guys are in a good majority of the Fortune 500. So these are massive operations. I have had this argument with HCI providers in the past that HCI doesn't save me any money. This isn't a conversation about saving money. This is a conversation about management, because alongside of my HCI, if I'm a large enterprise, I'm going to have my traditional storage arrays. I'm going to have direct attach storage.
Absolutely.
I'm going to have all these different storage options. Talk to me about integration. I hear SimpliVity is part of the storage group inside of HPE. How, is that in name only? Like when I look at the portfolio and I need to manage my storage landscape, what value is there in choosing a SimpliVity HCI solution versus some other platform?
Yeah. So I think, first of all, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, in any enterprise environment, there is not one solution fits all. So you need to have a variety of. And I think that's why HPE also has this broad portfolio. So we have like 3PAR, we have Nimble, we have SimpliVity all in our storage portfolio. But when it comes to integration, obviously, we recently brought SimpliVity into the storage organization because there is a lot of synergies we can leverage. And so the first thing that you see, actually, what we did is we brought InfoSight, HPE InfoSight, our artificial intelligence, into the SimpliVity portfolio. So what this allows us to do is now when you have HPE solutions in your environment, you have 3PAR arrays, you have Nimble arrays, and of SimpliVity, you have a single dashboard where you can actually see what's going on in my environment. You will also be able to understand how is my environment behaving. Is there anything I should do differently? Should I reconfigure some of the things because there's best practices out there? If you have troubles on your environment, it's a fast and quick way of getting actually support to really look at your systems and help you out and really solve your problems, or even proactively notify you, hey, there's a drive that might go wrong, let us ship you a replacement drive. So all these capabilities we're now bringing to SimpliVity, and that is, I think, one of the first things that you will see as a big benefit. But we're not stopping here. So there's other parts in the HPE storage portfolio that we're taking advantage of. One thing I talked a little bit about is SimpliVity has built-in capabilities around resiliency and backup and recovery. So SimpliVity has a default function that allows you to directly back up from a SimpliVity environment with the efficiency of SimpliVity. So dedupe and compression automatically. So we do a backup on a data layer. We don't have to pull it out through the hypervisor. Now, traditionally, you have done this within the SimpliVity ecosystem, so from one SimpliVity cluster to a different SimpliVity cluster. What we're adding very shortly is we will be adding the capability to also back up to a store once solution. So that gives you the ability to actually back it up into a different type of media. And then from there, you can move it wherever you want, on a tape drive or even onto the cloud or wherever you want to go. So as you can see, is we are now really deeply integrating SimpliVity and not just basically putting it in a name.
So it's all about choice. I like the fact that it's not just, and this is, I think I've made this comment before, HPE is very different than HP. That in HP, a solution like this integration just simply wouldn't happen. On paper, makes sense, but you know what, for whatever reason, it's just too big, it wouldn't. The new HPE, I'm seeing a lot of this happen across the board. Relationships with outside partners such as VMware grow in strength, and HPE innovating again in ways that I haven't seen in quite some time. So I'm happy to see that it's happening with the SimpliVity brand. Last question: if people want to find out more about SimpliVity, where do they go? Like, how do I find SimpliVity? One, how do I spell SimpliVity?
So, well, it's actually pretty easy. It's basically simplicity, except with the C you put a V, so it's SimpliVity.
A capital V.
A capital V, yeah, so that's how our branding works. Right. But I think the easiest way is just go on the HPE website and search for SimpliVity, and you will get all the information. And we have a separate portal on there that talks about all the benefits of SimpliVity, and a lot of material, even videos, customer testimonials, how people enjoy working with SimpliVity. So I think that's a great way of getting started. And then there's also some amazing YouTube videos out there. So another opportunity to go, and then as well as all your recordings will also show the benefits of SimpliVity.
Really appreciate you taking the time out. That's it for this edition of the CTO Advisor at VMworld 2019, sponsored by HPE, but there's plenty of coverage left. We have still yet a lot of conversations to have with the HPE team, analysts, independent influencers. Stay tuned to the conversation. Follow the hashtag CTO Dose on Twitter. You can follow us, specifically me on the web, at CTO Advisor on Twitter, and the CTOadvisor.com is the website. Talk to you next, CTO Dose.